Welcome to A Leader Story, where we explore the unique paths of extraordinary leaders. In each episode, we ask the same 7 questions to our guests, revealing the diverse journeys and insights that shape their success. Join us as we uncover the stories that make each leader's experience truly one of a kind. Today, we have Gwen Thorn, a visionary leader in the realm of customer success. As the Vice President of Customer Success at MoveWorks, Gwen has spent the last 7 years driving innovation and ensuring that customers maximize the potential of AI and machine learning to resolve IT issues autonomously. Her leadership has been instrumental in transforming customer experiences and delivering tangible results. Join us as we delve into Gwen's story, exploring the insights and experiences that have shaped her impactful leadership career. Gwen, what is one decision you made that was a turning point for your leadership?
Yeah, that's a good one. So for me, it was really leaning into hard conversations that was a turning point for me. At my core, I'm a bit of a people pleaser. I don't like to rock the boat, cause friction. So I would say early in my management career, I'd shy away from like confrontation and difficult conversations, especially where I had to deliver criticism, harsh feedback, any of that. So when I was forced into those situations, it would just loom over me, like sleepless nights, short temper. You guys know the gist. But I learned that really these conversations get easier, one, the more you do them. And people ultimately appreciate, there's that whole radical candor component, but they appreciate getting feedback and coaching and better guidance on that, even if it might be a challenging conversation. But at the end of the day, at your heart is their best interest. So you're trying to help them. So to be candid, I still have that initial trepidation when I know I need to have a hard conversation, but I've gotten much better about doing them. And I hold myself accountable to delivering critical feedback more consistently to help those people around me grow.
That's really good. So to double click on that too, I think, so that turning point as you dive into that, right? Was there a critical point where you realized, oh, I can't not do this any longer?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like maybe a year and a half ago where there was someone on my team who was clear, like there was some unhappiness, the scope of role, how that role was being viewed within the organization. Things were just challenging. And it just became this little nagging thing that would come up in one-on-ones. And I could tell there was a frictional, like, not unhappiness at its core, but try to glaze on and keep going, other, tactical things to get through. And it just became like a problem because I could tell the more I ignored it and they kind of had it in the periphery, the more it was just, inside, causing that cancerous like feelings of a little bit of resentment, a little bit of distrust, because we just weren't addressing it head on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was making me more and more anxious. Like my husband knew when the one-on-ones with this person was coming up because I would be a little bit like grumpy. I would be like, oh, like he was like, oh, you're talking to so-and-so today. I was like, yeah, it was just becoming that obvious, which is terrible that I let it get to that point, right? So at that point, I just decided I'm going to lean into having this crazy conversation with this person. I'm going to block off time to mentally prepare myself. I'm going to block an hour and say this time's just devoted to hearing about how you're feeling. And I think it was very cathartic for them in a sense to like get it all off their chest. I'm not saying just saying it resolved it. I had to like dig into the issues. I had to figure out paths for a lot of that, but confronting it head on just made me more comfortable. And to be honest, I've had more and more of these where like something's wrong, whether it's like there's feedback on someone, I need to bring that feedback to them and think of how to deliver it, or these kind of situations where I can tell someone's unhappy. The longer you punt on them, usually they don't go away, is what I learned. So like figuring out how I'm going to address them and doing it in a timely manner actually adds some relevancy to that person too. Like they sometimes understand because of the relevancy in time, right? They're like, oh yeah, that thing last week. Oh, you're giving me feedback on it. I can understand how that might be challenging. So it made it, oh, you detected that I was not feeling good. Like how thoughtful of you to see that and want to have that conversation with me. So it actually in some ways became like a superpower to address it more. Although, like I said, I'm still like holding myself to that account of making sure I do it more.
Yeah, no, it's good. That's good insights. So moving into the next question, Gwen, how do you foster innovation and creativity within your team?
This one's super interesting. So fostering an environment of innovation and creativity is creating a workspace where folks get to learn and evolve in a safe space is how I interpret that. And which I think that's the ultimate goal as a leader. You want people to feel like they're challenged at work and get to do fun things, but are feeding into the ultimate mission of what they're hired to do. So as humans, we need an element of consistency, right? If every day
Mm.
was a total wild card, you just showed up on a Zoom, who knew what was going to happen? It'd be a struggle bus, right? Wouldn't be fun. It'd be hard to know what's going to happen and be prepared, really. So you have to create some core tenets to a job that like your expectations are very clear on. So give them the tools to do those things, have clarity on the expectations, but allow them to infuse their own creativity into how they do it. You don't have to be super prescriptive. Oh, you have to deliver it in X or Y manner. You have to follow a script. That's the fun of it, is getting to be an artist with how you use the different tools. So in parallel to that piece, okay, I've told you the mandate, I've given you the tools to accomplish it. My expectations are clear. You want to create a dynamic where your team, can raise these controversial ideas or critical feedback they might have as they use these tools to accomplish things without a fear of retribution. You want them to feel like there's a safe space. But I have a warning on this one, a little lesson learned from my experience. There is a balance where you can't have an open forum constantly. Ultimately, decisions have to be made. We have to move forward. And so I made the mistake early in my management career of trying to get a unanimous agreement on everything. Where I tried to get the whole masses, everyone's agreeing we're going to do this, right? Like everyone, raise your hand. Like impossible. What ended up happening was tons of cycles talking about really menial small changes, and it was just not productive. Yes, people felt like part of the process, but it wasn't productive for us moving and progressing in a leadership direction. So now I bring key items where I need their input and alignment, and I create a structured forum where they can raise feedback. But I also time get it. I'm like, this isn't a thing we're gonna punt and you can provide feedback every week and it just never gets done. This is time bounded. But there are tons of other things where I just say, this is what we're gonna do. I don't invite debate. Of course, they can privately come to me and say, well, I have a concern or this or that, but I'm not trying to create a whole, caucus that we all go together and make the choice together. So yeah, I like this question because it's something I'm kind of constantly wrestling with. And on a quarterly basis, I'm always like trying new ways to keep the innovations, the creativity there for the team. But I think there's lots of dynamics you have to think about when you consider innovation and creativity.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that leads really well into the next one because it is a balance. And so next question, Gwen. So how do you balance driving results with maintaining a positive team culture?
So to me, balancing driving results with maintaining a positive team culture is about creating clarity of focus. Can't do everything, but everyone on the team should have this visceral understanding of the core goals we're trying to accomplish. So I like to keep this to no more than 3 goals. And anything more than that, I just think it's hard to keep track of and remember. So what are the core tenets? And every quarter or half, I like to make sure we're reaffirming, like, has anything changed? What's going on? So to outline those 3 outcomes we're trying to achieve together, I have to explain the why they are important. Like, why is that so important? And show the team the path we are carving to get there. So a real example. So as a team, at MoveWorks, customer success team is focused on GDR. So are we able to retain the accounts that come in? And on the other side, we're focused on the cost to retain. Can we do that efficiently? So yeah, of course I could retain every account if I have like 5 CSMs swarming on them, of course. But there's a balance to be sought. Can I have a 1 CSM manage a portfolio of accounts and also like successfully renew them? And that's fine and like makes sense. But at the end of the day, when you get more accounts, it's like, more workload, more stuff you have to do. Like, what could we just hire a few more people? And so I have to kind of outline, okay, there's a bigger path as a company we're going on. And in fact, what's that journey to IPO? And what are the important things that investors look at? And how do we chart that course and figure out what that looks like? So like taking them back to the fundamentals, I think it was like a 20-30 minute, like almost tutorial on IPO readiness that we took the team on to help them understand why we're so focused on these. Yes, of course it's a goal, but like what's the rationale behind us and why does it actually help all of us? Like, guess what? We all have sweat equity in this baby. And if we're able to do this more efficiently and take this thing public, we all benefit from that. So that was really important for me, is like talking them through the why. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece is, how do you do that while maintaining positivity? So there are 3 things. See what I did there? 3. Yep. So 3 things I like to think of when it comes to this. 1, and we kind of touched on this earlier, was I like to invite feedback. Like, it's important to have a vision and a path, but you have to be receptive to inputs and how to improve that path. Yeah. Now, ultimately, your team is living and breathing the experience every day, and they often have insights that you may not be aware of as a leader. You're in only certain spheres within what the team's doing. So letting everyone have a seat at the table and that quest to evolve the plan is really important. So that was one. The second is around sharing public positive for praise. Of course, we
Mm,
always, you always hear, okay, make sure people feel like, they're acknowledged at work and that they're doing good work. And how do you do that? But my thesis here is, okay, like you want folks to, one, ensure they're feeling valued, and two, do it in a public forum, because not only does that give them some credit, but it also shows the company more broadly what you and the team are working on. It creates kind of a shared mutual understanding of the mission of the group. So I know that some people love public praise, some people shy away from it. You don't have to put someone in the spotlight if they're more introverted or maybe a little more sensitive to that, but finding ways to do that in a public forum, I think is important. And then the last one, have fun. I know it sounds
yeah.
goofy, but this whole element of positivity, like this is about us as a group coming together. We spend a lot of days and hours together as a team, and we ultimately want to enjoy that time. So this is my forever quest. Whatever job you're in, management, not, whether you're at this company or a different company, it's important to have that fun element. So that could be something like a team offsite. Awesome. If you have the budget and the means and bring everyone together and do something fun, great. But it can be basic. We just had a big team kickoff all on Zoom, and people are trickling in for the first, let's say, 5 minutes, and just have some fun, like chit chat with people. What are people doing for summer vacations? Ask people about a new pet. What's the best burrito on the West Coast? Whatever. It doesn't have to be anything crazy serious, but foster these little conversations. Try to incorporate people from the team so you get to hear different viewpoints, and that builds a sense of connection and creates a sense of community. So set the goals, help people understand the path and why those goals are important, but also like find that positivity element and make sure you're fostering that as you go.
That's really good. I appreciate the insight there too, because especially at the stage of where your company is from an IPO perspective, right? You have a different set of maybe what driving results means to you. So it's cool to see, your perspective where you are. So, I appreciate that insight. So Gwen, can you describe a moment when you had to make a tough ethical decision?
Oh my gosh, this question. Okay, so all the cards on the table, Joe. I went to the hairdresser this week and I was preparing, because you happen to sit sometimes and wait for things to happen at the hairdresser. And I'm literally on my phone and I was like Googling, what is an ethical decision? I wanted to make sure I was responding to the prompt, but it's funny. I don't feel like the word ethical gets used a lot. And so I was like, I want to make sure I'm matching this prompt right. So all cards on the table, I Googled ethical, and I was like, this is an interesting one, because I don't know if I grapple with these as much. I don't know if this fits the ethical perfectly, but a scenario I have found challenging in the past is when you are letting someone go who is a nice person, but they're underperforming. Sounds obvious, right? I'm sure this has come up before, but as a leader, like you have feel a sense of responsibility. Like I hired this person, I should be able to coach them up to that level I need them at. So when there's someone who's like good and they're trying and they're genuine, but it's not working, I think you feel a sense of responsibility as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's really hard. So what's helped me in this scenario is often I have to come to terms that parting ways is actually better for both parties. Maybe I'm trying to fit this like square peg in the round hole and it's just not effective. And in fact, I'm elongating the pain maybe with both parties being unhappy. So if you're unable to achieve the outcomes you want with a person, they are starting to feel demoralized, ultimately unable to overcome them. What I like to do is set a clear timetable on it. So often I feel like managers, as they're like evaluating this and grappling, they're like, they just need another month to turn it around. Just let me give more coaching. I'll spend another hour with them every week. So one, be aware as a manager that your time is also a valuable resource. If you suddenly sink 3 hours on this person every week, what about the rest of your team? Maybe they're getting less of your love and attention. They're not able to flourish, and you may lose great folks because of that. So that's one vector. When it comes to that setting a time parameter, what I recommend is just set a timetable for yourself. Okay, I'm going to give this a good college try. I'm going to give it a month. I'm going to give it 3 months, whatever that window is. Choose it and align both parties. I expect you, person, to be able to do X, Y, and Z at this bar that I'm defining by a date. Select the date, make sure you're both unified. That way there's no surprise for either party. It's clear the time range you're working on, it's clear the expectations, and it's up to both of you to try to make it happen. But at the end of the day, usually if you're able to establish that, the person knows if they haven't met that. In some ways they're appreciative that you were so upfront with them about that journey, and it wasn't like a surprise shot in the dark one day they came to work and got fired. So to me, hard to let people go who are truly putting in the good old college try, but sometimes it's the right thing for them and it's the right thing for you and the company and your organization.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's like you said, it's good for everybody involved to make those choices quickly, at least in a time-bound way. So, leading into the next question, I think this plays well into it, and we've talked about feedback already, but this will dive into it a little bit more. Gwen, what role does feedback play in your leadership? How do you both give and receive it?
Yeah, it's a great one. First of all, like, you can't really be in business if you don't give feedback. Like, feedback is a big mode of how we all grow and evolve as humans as well. So there's that old adage, feedback is a gift, which I totally agree with, but I want to add that you want the perfect gift for the person, right? You want it to be very catered feedback to them, and in a sense you want it to be wrapped for the occasion, right? You want to make sure you're presenting it in a way that is going to resonate with them, and ultimately they will take it and be able to digest it and consume it. So I like to think of those two. So I don't mean you have to sugarcoat things when it comes to
No.
delivery, but I think it's important to know the person and understand how you can motivate them with this information and ensure that they're in a receptive state of mind when you give it. So often I feel like the higher you get in an organization, the less sometimes you think about this, because you're kind of like at a point where you're like, everyone has to listen to my feedback, which isn't a good mentality to take. You need to be like really thinking about how you can help that person and help them be in the psyche to receive the feedback and move beyond it and what that looks like. And one thing that I will mention in doing this is that I always think it's important to signal in some sense when you're coming into a conversation to give them feedback. Just to give an example, I have folks that I work with, and one of them came to a one-on-one and said to me in advance, like, I'm going to go to this one-on-one and do a reset with this person in our working relationship. I want to change the dynamic. I feel like it hasn't been great. And the one-on-one happened, and the other person came to me and was like, I had the weirdest interaction with this person. Like, I felt like they were trying to defend something that happened in the past. I didn't understand why and what was happening. And I was like, honestly, this was simple miscommunication. If you were like going into a standard set meeting and you want to change the paradigm and, approach it with a totally different lens of giving feedback or doing a reset, just tell them that. Tell them in advance too, so they come in prepared. Give them a notice that even a day before, hey, guess what? Tomorrow in our one-on-one, I'm really excited to like think about how we can better partner for the next quarter. Just wanted you to have a heads up. Nothing you have to prepare, but I'll be bringing some ideas to the table. Something as simple as that helps that person understand what you're trying to accomplish in that moment, and gives them the opportunity to come in prepared and not feel like, whoa, what's happening? We're doing feedback. I'm not ready. I'm not mentally there. I was, going to bring you some tactical items to work through, things like that. So I highly recommend, as you think about feedback, giving people a heads up and just keeping in mind, like, we're not wind-up machines. We're all complex creatures. Be thoughtful and respectful in how other people receive the information, whether that's giving them a lot of examples of cases where they've done this, or maybe just one really recent example, or maybe it's showing them what greatness is in others, or letting them figure that out themselves. Maybe it's interweaving the positive. Some people like that positive on either end. Hey, you're great at this area you need to improve, but know that at the end of the day you're doing awesome
crap
work.
Sandwich, some people
Exactly. I was like, wait, everybody has a slightly different standard, so I was like, let me describe it. But some people like to just dig in the challenges. So know that person's temperament a little bit to be able to cater it. So that was a lot on the giving. I think the receiving is kind of goes along those same lines. One, I know that not everyone knows to signal feedback. So I try to, like, when I realize someone's giving feedback, like, not get into the immediate like defensive or interrogation mode and just receive some of it. Let them get it off their chest. Now, it's okay to ask them follow-up questions and dig in to better understand it, but I do think that there's an element of like allowing them to unload it before you get into a super like picking it apart mode, because sometimes people take that as being defensive. So in terms of receiving it, I try to like let them say their bit and then kind of get a better understanding, get some examples, better interpret that. I guess I have a bit of an example of the receiving. So I had someone on the team set up a one-on-one with me. Wasn't out of the blue, but they kind of set a little bit of the stage. Hey, I want to talk about this other role, and I got into it, and they're like, "Hey, I want to do this other role." I was like, "Cool. Tell me more about why and what's going on." And kind of what I realized in backing into it is that they had challenges with their manager and were feeling like this other role was almost an opportunity to jump over and escape. So it was actually an opportunity where like they were kind of coming to me with an ask, but I was able to use it to get feedback and to kind of get out of them a few nuggets that really help me like shape how I think that other person can evolve and deliver feedback to them more thoughtfully in a way that they thought maybe coming into it was a little transactional, like, hey, promote me, move me over here to this different thing, but I tried to like dig in a nice way without making them feel too on the spot into what was really motivating that, and it ended up being like effectively a great feedback session. I was able to get a lot of great insights from them.
That's awesome. That's really good. I like that. I think that plays well into the next question, Gwen. How do you continue to grow and develop as a leader?
Yeah. This one is super interesting. So, I think I generally have a pretty high curiosity when it comes to work. I always I'm looking for ways I can learn, I can expand, and generally that serves me pretty well. So my barometer, I guess, for professional growth is like continuing to learn and grow my impact. I'm happy if I do that. Yeah, of
Mhm.
course, titles help. Money is never a bad thing, but I like to feel like I am learning and growing, and
Mhm.
that's kind of my jam. So I seek out opportunities that scratch either of those itches, learning or growth, ideally both. And recently I got an opportunity to dive into a process that was owned by a totally different team and kind of help them overhaul it. So to be fair, the ask was, hey, can you figure out like how to stem off some of these customer success, like customer requests so that the engineers aren't like building a bunch of things that might not be that useful more broadly for our customer base? Okay, reasonable to bring me in. So I was filling a practical hole, but it was a really interesting experience for me because it set forward a new challenge. I got to like figure out a very foreign process that someone I don't know well had built, understand the whys of how they built it, understand like where it was frictional, work with stakeholders that like I'd been peers with in the past, but like really tangentially partnering with. But this I really got into the nuance of how they work, like how their temperaments are, how they, wake up in the morning and what they do. So it was really fun for me untangling that workflow, stepping back to help them align on goals, implementing and iterating this new approach. So for me, my growth is like to some degree, I seek out these opportunities, but I also generally say yes to opportunities, especially when they stretch me. If something comes up, I may even point out, hey, that's kind of a challenging area. Like maybe there's an opportunity to improve that. Maybe I can help, whether that's coaching someone or directly being involved in it. So one, I guess I say yes to things as they arise and generally like try to step into these, of course, with the parameters of like if I get in over my head, of course, I'll have a conversation and figure out what that looks like. And the other is like, as I see problems where I think I could help, raising my hand in a light way to say, hey, let me like help you. I've been in a similar situation or I've seen this play out in different ways. Can I help you? So again, a bit of tangential, but for me, growth and development as a leader is learning and evolving and saying yes and raising my hand for things has really helped in that.
That's good. That's really good. So, leading into the next question and last question, Gwen, what leadership book or books, I'll say, has influenced you the most and why?
Okay, I'm gonna be real, Joe. I'm not one to dance around this. I do not read business books. I just don't. I don't read
That's fine.
them. Like, I just find the meandering array of stories and buzzwords a little bit mind numbing. Like,
Yep.
I work hard, like, many hours a day, and then to like go home and like open a book to read more about it, just not into it. So I'm prepared to get blown up in the comments. I'm open to being proven wrong. That's cool. I'm totally cool with it. But that being said, to me, this question is really about how do you continue to reevaluate and evolve your worldview to adapt to like changing circumstances, new information, stuff shifting.
Yep.
So here are a few things that I like to do on that front. So one, I like to listen to podcasts, which you could argue is like a book in a lot of ways. So typically I have a few different flavors. I some of them generally they're centered around like current events, business stuff, but not universally. So I wanted to share a few that I enjoy. I like Pivot because I think it's good for current events. It gives me little nuggets of what's happening in the world. The podcast Founders is super interesting to go in depth on companies and journeys that people have been on, which I always find very interesting. Like I'm gonna step into a different world.
Yep.
Sam Harris is Making Sense really goes deep on topics not related to business always, but like it reminiscence of that, right? It helps me think about how to view and investigate different things, almost that like first principles thinking that people talk about. I feel
Yep.
like Sam Harris has a good sense of that, so I enjoy that one. And then sometimes you don't have to go like super sciencey and walk away with like all these learnings. Sometimes it's just fun to understand humans and hear candid conversations. So I really like Smartless because it's just enjoyable, guys who are friends talking, they bring in different people, you get a little glimpse of different things. Maybe it's an athlete talking about their life, some famous actor describing how they choose different plays or movies to be in. So I enjoy that one because it's like a little lighter, but still like you learn about humans and you learn about different psychology elements as you listen to all of those. So point one, I like to do podcasts, and I also
Yep.
commute, and that always helps. Hands-free reading, right? Basically.
For sure.
The other one is that I do work on actively educating myself on different paradigms that I think can help my team. So as an example, this last half a year, so last 6 months, I really wanted to invest in the managers that I manage. I haven't, of course I do one-on-ones with them, individual coaching, but I haven't felt like I built like a strong management foundation. And so we did two things. One, we did a series on business acumen. So kind of like I talked about earlier when I talked about like describing to the team how, driving gross dollar retention is important for the team because it ties back into company goals, which ties back into us being successful as a company going IPO. I wanted to do that, but for the management group in a more granular way. Let's talk about what professional services margins mean. How do people think about that? How do they conceptualize the trade-offs of making different choices? So business acumen is really about teaching them the mechanics of a company. So they had a broader view and could understand how different goals ladder in and how business operates effectively. So that was one thing that was interesting. And the other was a manager development series. Those are more about the skills to being a manager. How do you manage your team effectively? How do you grow and nurture your individual contributors? What do you do? And so in both of those courses that we did, I did a lot of preparation. So I'm no expert at either of these things, or no one can be the master. So I did a lot of Googling in the beginning. Like, let me learn about different. I had these whole series. I had different topics for different sessions. Like as an example, for the manager series, one was like, how do you have your ICs to have better time management? We hear a lot, people are stressed. How do I prioritize? Like, how do you coach someone? And so I would go and I would Google a bunch of different things and I would research. And what I found through that, my little nugget here, is that I know I sound like some Ivy League crazy kid, but really, I will say that Harvard Business Review had great content.
100%.
Awesome, right?
Every episode, it's amazing.
Quality content and of different flavors. It wasn't everything the same. It was some short articles, some long. It was some like written interviews. There were podcasts. Regardless of what I read, for the most part, there were great nuggets in those pieces. So frankly, sounds goofy, but if you're trying to seek and develop your team and read different viewpoints and strategies, I found HBR invaluable, and like it's now in my like pretty consistent rotation when I'm like trying to think through a new problem or space. Like, let me go and understand some of that more. So anyways, that was a really long-winded way to say podcasts are one thing that influenced me, and like research with really Harvard Business Review is one of those tools, and how I develop and grow and educate people have been really helpful for me. So those have kind of like helped influence how I grow and evolve the team and how I like stay informed of those different components. So no one book, no secret sauce when it comes to books. Like I said, if someone has an amazing book that's going to change my life, I'm all about it. I'll try anything. But those have really helped me as I've evolved my leadership.
That's really good. I think it's funny too, because I think you're the 12th person I've interviewed, and 50% of the folks have, they're like, well, it's just not a book for me, or it's not a leadership book, or it's, it is just, we learn in different ways, and we consume information and to become better leaders in different ways. And so it's good. I appreciate the insights there. I really, really appreciate it. So that is our last question, Gwen. I really appreciate your time.
First of all, thank you for having me on and inviting me on, Joe. I hope my meandering thoughts can help folks navigate their own leadership journeys. And that's really whether you're leading an actual team or just taking control of your own mandate, your scope, and leading from the front of that pack. So everyone can grow and evolve. Just take the time to reflect and really chart your own path. And that's kind of my quick and dirty lesson.
I love it. I love it. And just like you're looking for those nuggets, hopefully there's going to be people that take quite a few nuggets away from this. So thank you so much. It was so much fun having Gwen on A Leader Story this week. Her energy and passion is infectious. And there are so many nuggets that can be taken from this episode to improve your leadership story. Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of A Leader Story. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe to help more people discover these inspiring leadership stories. And don't forget to tune in every Tuesday for new episodes. See you next week, and keep writing your own unique leadership story.